Are you an educator or an instructor? Teach adults, teach children? Have you ever had those students that are struggling, or you have a lot of students struggling through a course and you can't just figure out why they're not doing any better? This is where responsible education comes in. And we're going to talk about how we can make responsible education mainly instead of using the terminology adult education. So, my name is Jason Jolson. I'm a content creator, educator, and just trying to change the way we look at how we develop education and shift the response and stop shifting the responsibility of poor course design onto our learners. So, over the next few minutes, I'm going to explain to you what responsible learning is, and then we're going to talk about the responsible learning formula and how to create curriculum in a better way to meet all students' needs. All right, let's talk about the term adult education. The biggest thing about the word adult education is that most of the time when you hear it, it's usually tagged with other sayings like the student needs to read the textbook one more time. Oh, we're not spoon feeding the student. Adult education is based off a lot of adult learning theories and pigeonholes adults into how they learn. So it has actually creates barriers to learning. Mainly that I found in my lifetime that institutions, companies, curriculum development, instructional designers use the word adult education to take the blame of poor curriculum design and put it back onto the learners. So you use a lot of times, like I said, you hear the terminology, well, they just need to read the textbook one more time. Well, reading the textbook 5 times, they haven't picked it up the first time isn't going to do it. So we need to shift this term adult education over to responsible education. We need to develop responsible education where the curriculum design team, the institution that's designing the education, is producing responsible education. And then, therefore, it now makes the student responsible. But currently, I find that adult education is just a terminology used for the institution or the designer or the instructor to blame the student for poor course design or just poor delivery of the education as it is. So let's take a look at this. Let's think about really what responsible education is not. It's not adult education. It's not pedagogy. It's not andragogy. It is about taking the content that needs to be taught or the education that needs to be taught and figuring out a way how to deliver it to the target audience. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to minimize what it is. So if you look at business training, in the world of business training, we bring somebody into our classroom, we teach them this stuff, and we get angry and we tell people it's adult education. That's why they didn't pick it up. But really, is it adult education or is it actually like pedagogy, like K-9 high school? Because the person that is coming in didn't choose to be there. You're trying to improve your KPIs. All right, let's move on to the next one. The biggest thing, like I really need to reiterate this part is the terminology of adult learning. So in the institution, companies, instructors, course design, how you deliver it, you will see numerous times where these people will use the terminology adult learning. It's adult learning, and somehow somebody has no idea what they're coming into to learn. They're going in there to get taught. Somehow we use that terminology adult learning to blame the learner for poor course design or not enough scaffolding that's underneath it to help the student get through, or there's not enough extra study material for it. So what ends up happening is we use the word adult learning, we blame the student, and it takes it off the backs of us as instructors, course designers, and companies and institutions. So let's start. So basically, responsible education lays the groundwork for learners to maximize their potential and attain the highest level of success during the education. Now, if we've created it this way, we did actually shift the responsibility to the learner to learn the material. Because in the end, the learner has to be able to learn the material, whether it is poor course design or not. So if we think about responsible education as that, we'll take the curriculum, all the information that we need to teach the person to be successful, and what we do is the next step would be is develop content, a cluster of type of educational content that maximizes the potential learners that we are actually targeting. So we look at actually what are the personas, build personas, what are the characteristics of the learners that are coming into our classroom, what type of content do we need to teach. So when education is designed responsibly, we've taken the time to make sure that we're teaching just the right amount of content that needs to do to achieve the education or whatever behavior change we're looking for. If we're doing business training, we want to change a KPI. Like we're not adding a bunch of junk miles to confuse the students or the learners or our staff on what we need them to do. By doing this and providing a cluster of or learning or educational material, the learner is now responsible for their success. They're the ones that need now to learn their material. Here's one of the big things I think is actually left out of a lot of adult education is the why I think responsible education is a better terminology is because with responsible education, we're building value. So we're looking at having value for the students that are coming in. What are they going to get out of it? If you're owning a business or you run a large corporation and you're doing a lot of training, and you need to change a KPI or key performance indicator, which benefits the company, not necessarily directly benefits the learner or your staff member that's coming in. The education you have has to have value, not only to change that KPI or allow these people to learn and grow, you also have to have something in it for them. Responsible education is value driven. So when we're talking about value, there's different ways. There's monetary, right? We talked about what are we getting out of the course, but the biggest thing about value driven is what is the pinch point? What is the problem we're solving? How are we going to solve this problem for this person when they take the course? At the end of the course, what are they going to be able to do to achieve? Sometimes value driven also has to do with like business training. What are we changing our key performance indicators? What behavior do we need to change? Do we need increased sales? Do we need to change a product to mitigate risk? So again, what is the value in the course? What are the problems? What are the pinch points? What are we trying to solve with this course? If you're taking a beginner knitting course, right, you sign up for it, you want to learn to knit. If you have a person coming to a bike shop, so he's part of the product team, he's coming to teach you how about the new bikes that you have, and he's going to go through the products. He's basically trying to teach your employees on what the specifications of each bike is, so that way they're more informed and they're better to sell the bikes to the customers that come in. So therefore, we're looking at this value driven. So what is the value of this course? The biggest thing in responsible learning is that we're going to recognize that our students or our learners are actually customers. It's kind of funny in the adult learning industry, and what we're talking about is big corporations, institutions, and that we look at it that it is a privilege for you to go to school and to get in. But sometimes we forget that actually the learner is a customer. So in any other businesses that you would attend, you probably would not tolerate some of the levels that you would get in current education. Like we talked about, that we can remember that our student or our learner is our customer. When we're developing education, whether we're an instructional designer or whether we're the person that says, "Hey, we need to build some education," or if I'm working for an institution, that the learner is the customer. So we got to look at different things like the learner being the customer. If we go to McDonald's, we expect the experience and maybe the quality of the food is going to be a lot of difference if we go to the keg or if we go to a higher end restaurant beyond above the keg. So when we're building education, it's kind of convenient that when we do look at, say, if I purchase a course for $10, I have in the time in which it was online, and I've purchased a course up to $650. And what's really funny is the difference in the experience between the two was not much. So when we're looking at value and the learner is the customer. So somehow that if I sign up to go to an institution, they accept me and they treat me like I'm privileged to go there, even though I'm forking over a lot of money to take these courses. And sometimes the education is not, the curriculum and the practice and everything is not developed to the level I would expect it to be. So I've paid for a KEG experience or more, but I'm really getting more than McDonald's experience out of the education. So when we are building this education, we don't want to push the blame back to the learner and go, well, they need to read the textbook more. It's adult learning. They should have done more practice. Maybe we did not, as curriculum designers, instructional designers, or now the new term is learning experience designers. Maybe we didn't actually build the best experience for these people. So think about that. Value driven. They are the customer, and what is the expectation when we are paying for a course? Let's talk a second about business training. So when we're talking about business training, this is your companies that are training their employees on certain things to change like I said, the key performance indicator, a KPI, or we need a behavioral change. We're trying to improve the business overall. And usually most businesses have a standard customer. If you're in the healthcare business, like being a paramedic, my patient is kind of like my number one customer. When if I'm running a bike shop, my number one customer is the person coming in that wants to buy a bike. But when we start designing business training, we also got to start looking at our employees become the learner and therefore they become the customer. customer, we also have to develop business training that has like a hook. What is in it for me? Well, how's it going to benefit me individually if I take this training as a business? So, biggest thing is that remember that business training has two customers, not just the end customer that we're delivering to. Most of the time, if we take care of our employees, train them well, give them good education that they want to be engaged in, that will easily trickle down to selling more product, better production. So, business training really you got two customers, but we need to focus on our main staff and employees and figure out what's going to benefit them. So value can come in two ways. So first of all, a lot of people have to pay for the courses. You're paying to go to university, college, or you're just going to take a continuing education course and you pay for it. What is the value that you're paying? What do you expect? Like what is expectations when you pay for a certain amount in a course? The other thing too is if you're running a business and you need to change a KPI, what's the value of changing that KPI? So if you have to have your staff change the way they look at things, how they develop things, or change the type of behavior that you want to improve a KPI. What is the value to that company? Second of all, we also look at value as the content of what is actually produced in the course. So, what kind of content is developed? Is it easy for the learner to learn the material and pass it on? Is there enough scaffolding, otherwise known as spoon feeding, which we like to say in the adult learning industry that we don't need to spoon feed these people because it's adult learning. Well, if you want that KPI changed, or if you want to charge a lot of money for your course, you better look at a lot of scaffolding or spoon feeding and develop content that is easily to transfer information. This is a big one for me. This is the I've paid a lot of money for a course, whether you paid $5 for a course, whether it's online, um, or whether you pay $1,000 for a course, does not necessarily mean that you're going to get better content throughout the educational experience. So as you're doing your educational experience, you're going through, you paid $1,000, you get in there, especially if it's an online course because of COVID, the way it's pushed everything, that thinks that we can develop everything online, whether it's face to face as well, and how it's delivered in the classroom does not necessarily always match what the cost of the course is. If you go take, there's actually companies out there or institutions that are teaching currently with multiple instructors face to face. So there's an instructor every day and it causes confusions for the students because they don't have clear messaging from day to day. So just because you charge the price, remember that the people are still your customer. The learner is your customer. So when we're going to charge for a $5 course, the expectation is much different than $1,000 course. And the type of content, the type of scaffolding that is it. But you better make sure that if you're producing $1,000 course, you're producing $1,000 course. An example would be students sometimes pay $800 for a course in university. They show up and there's like 300 of them in the room. And basically, you just have a prof at the front that lectures to you and then gives you his poor PowerPoints. And then they call it a day. I don't think really $800 when you have that many students in the class really equals, value. So when we get into this, we look at this quick little screen. We got the dollar sign at the top. Again, we're talking about monetary kind of costs, whether it is that person, the learner or student's paying to take the course, or whether the company needs to change a KPI to increase sales, or maybe they're mitigating risk in the end. It's still going to save them money. And based on how much content is developed in the course to help the learner. And again, when we're building content, whether it is producing videos, graphics, it does take up a lot of time. Sometimes it takes up a lot of effort. Even putting online, somehow you got to pay for the hosting. So when we look at the bottom, basically we should be developing our responsible learning based on costs and based on what we need to change. So if you're over in the business thing, like what at the end are we trying to change? So we want to look at the bare minimum that needed to change the behavior of the staff member, or what we need to teach. So if we're just going to teach knitting, how is important is it? Are we going to just do a quick video slide presentation like this one, and we're going to charge $5 just to cover some hosting costs, or maybe we give it away for free? So when your person comes in, and there isn't a lot of underpinning knowledge, there isn't a lot of scaffolding or spoon feeding. But when I pay $5 or pay $20, I expect that there's going to be a minimum of support versus where if I pay $1,000. So we got to make sure that when we are developing, what is the cost and what is the, or for the business is what is the KPI and what are we looking to change? So let's get dive deeper into what is a responsible education. So basically, responsible education is that we're going to take the content. So we're going to tailor the content to make to meet our learners' needs and also what the content needs to be taught. If we're looking at teaching just a course online like I'm doing here to uh, basically make people aware of what I believe is good terminology, which is responsible education, we're just going to have a quick video presentation that goes from slide to slide. There's a lot of moving, there's no animation in here. And then we're going to tailor for the content to the people that are interested that are struggling with teaching and how they develop course design. We also want to take the learner's needs, wants, the environment, and the experience. So we're going to take basically the content, the minimum amount of content needed to teach the objective of our course. We're going to tailor it to the learner's needs, wants, environments, and their experience. And by doing that, we're going to come out with the best outcome for that student to be successful through that education. And again, like we're talking about responsible learning, if we build the correct needs, wants, and environment and experiences throughout the education, it now does shift the responsibility to the student. So one of the things I do know, and we're going to talk again about up top there, it talks about the responsible education formula. It's kind of the idea, the outline that I kind of run on is that we're going to take the curriculum, we're going to make responsible curriculum with the right content in it that we need to change or to teach the objective that we want to achieve throughout the education. Next, we need to build responsible practice design. We're going to talk about that coming up, what responsible practice is, because we need to take the material in the educational piece, the curriculum, and we need to give something for the students to use, to practice it, to hone it, to get it to stick to some shelves in their mind. And then we have to have responsible evaluations. And we're not going to go deep into these. We're just going to touch on them through this course. And next, the biggest thing is they need real life experience, right? To really truly master those skills. But if we can get all these into place for the student, we end up with the best success for that student to achieve the outcomes that they want to do, or if as a business that we need them to do. So when we're developing a responsible curriculum, we got to look at what needs to be objective. What is the objective at the end? What are we trying to achieve at the end of this education? And how are we going to deliver it? So we want to make sure that we develop the content to minimize the amount of extra junk miles, like extra information that's involved. So when we're building content, and our curriculum, we want to figure out what the bare minimum is needed to get the learner to achieve the objective. It's nice to have some little maybe underlying information that kind of bolsters, maybe is a bit of scaffolding in there. But when you're building the scaffolding and you're putting this other thing is make sure it's not a distraction from the core teaching. What is the minimum content needed, and how do you need to deliver it to meet your objective, to get the learner to understand and put the information or subject into practice? We got to be very careful of junk miles. It's very easy for us to sit in behind our desk here and start telling you exactly, oh, we need to add this to, they need more information on this, they need more information on this. And this actually, what happens is becomes actually more of a distraction. And then you can't figure out why that your students are struggling or your employees aren't just picking up this new technique or information. They can't figure out how the process works. It's probably because maybe we put way too much extra information in there that wasn't necessary. So basically, I was calling them junk miles. You got to be careful. We don't want to be putting a bunch of junk miles and information in when we're building our information. Keep the content relative and concise, and make sure your delivery is correct, whether it's face to face, online. And again, we got to worry about time. When you start putting too much junk miles in, now all of a sudden you're blowing the time that it takes to deliver it, and it can cause more confusion. So like we just talked about, we talked about the curriculum and the kind of the content. Here we're going to focus on the content. So this, when we're developing the content, not necessarily does it need to be a video presentation. Again, like I brought up the idea that if you are an owner of a bike shop and the bike product guy comes in, if Norco Tech rep comes in, he's going to teach. He's doing an education portion, and it may only be a half an hour when he talks about the new features and that, and it might just be all he does, and he doesn't need to get into the super nuances. He can just create a discussion. Um, it doesn't have to be this overcomplicated thing. So depending on what we're developing, what their end objective is, it depends on how the content will be built. Do we need a number set of videos are broken down into simple steps versus complex? Not only, and by building this way, we're going to make it more optimal for the student to be successful, or your employee to pick up the information or the new process quicker, so that when we're building the content, let's keep it concise. Let's not do over too much content, try to put too much stuff into it and create more junk miles that just confuses our students. Time is another big one for responsible curriculum. This when we're developing our content, we got to figure out how much time it's going to take. Is it going to take a big set of time, or is it a short amount of time? Maybe it's just a little bit. What happens though when we start developing though is it's very easy for us to get carried away. To, like we talked earlier in a little earlier in the video about how much time we can just keep adding more junk miles. We can adding more information. Sometimes we've been tasked to build a educational piece that's supposed to be taught in 40 minutes, and by the time we get done, we have this bloated piece of education that is now 120 minutes that needs to be taught with all the activities, all the knowledge has been included. So we need to figure out exactly what is needed and get it down to where it's a reasonable amount of time. Maybe on the other hand, maybe the material does take 120 minutes to be taught and actually to be successful for the learner. Again, this is that responsible learning. Are we trying to teach something to somebody in too short of time? So if you've been tasked with the idea that it's got to be 40 minutes, it's going to take 120 minutes, 110 minutes, you're going to have to go back and figure out how you're going to make that work. Maybe you need to cut it down into two courses. The other thing too is the delivery of the time. When you go to deliver the course, are you delivering the course? Do I take the course today, especially in a business sense? Of training, like I deliver the material today about a new process, but the process will not be implemented about till I don't know, say 4 months down the road. How much of that process are they going to remember? So remember, timing has a really big component, and it's very easy to sit behind a desk and just keep adding more material to your courses and not really understand what the timing is. So therefore, when you do produce, even if you're doing a face-to-face course, if you have to produce your own video presentations, it gives you a good idea what your timing is going to be. Another way to build a responsible curriculum is to build education clusters. So education clusters offers the learners multiple ways to learn. One of the ways is like building a presentation, a video presentation, even if the subject is preventing face to face. First of all, it gives you timing how long the course will take to teach. You can present to people online with your alpha or beta testing to get your ideas. Also, if you do a straight presentation, you can put that video afterwards online where the learners can review it as many times as they want. That way, they can have a better opportunity to learn quicker. They have a consistent messaging through the video presentation. That way, if you're using multiple instructors over your course, so if you have a course of 30 days, and throughout those 3 days, you're going to have multiple instructors teaching, there is a consistent message done in the videos. It's always the same thing. Also, the instructors can study the videos and know exactly what kind of message your company wants to give out. Videos can be broken down into learning clusters without having to design each piece individually. It's a way to just speed up your production. So you might be wondering, how does this video presentation production increase my learning cluster? Like how design, like how can I use video presentation? So first of all, it teaches you to rehearse your material by building these video presentations. But what you do is you make your video presentation, and then what you can do is easily remove the audio through a video editing program. You can separate the audio from the video and just have an audio podcast that the learners or students or employees or staff could download and listen to while they're driving to and from work, or if they're at home cleaning the house and they want to listen to it to reinforce the material that you're teaching. And you've just created another source of way for the patient to learn. Sorry, the student to learn. Another thing is documentation. You should actually have some type of workbook. So easily you could take the transcript, you can transcribe the video, and you'll have all the text from the video, and then what you do is you convert it into a type of a documentation for them to read or follow along with. The next step is also convert a PowerPoint if it's used in the delivery of the program. So like this program here, we have a PowerPoint or a slide presentation. We can convert that slide presentation and turn it into a study guide for them for extra reference. So just out of the video presentation alone, you can build up to 4 different types of learning material. What is it? What's in it for me? We all know that terminology. What isn't for me? They're being selfish. People feel about the learners. Well, really, what it comes down to is the reason I'm taking a course, I've signed up for it, paid for it. I'm trying to fix a problem, trying to learn something new. I am coming to better myself. I'm trying to create growth. So, what is it for me? So, a lot of times, what we have to do is we have to show the learners or the students when they get into the course what is in it for them. How is it going to make them better? Especially if you're doing business training, where really the what is in it for them is actually more what is in it for the business. But can we build a hook for the students to hook into it and say, oh, this is important and I need to change my behavior. I need to learn this process. If I'm just taking a basic course at a university or college, we still have to build those hooks. We just don't go, well, it's adult learning. They signed up and we're just going to shove the information down their throat. They have to create engagement. You have to, as a learner, I have to know what's in it for me. So again, we need to create fantastic hooks, right? Just like the advertising industry is, we want to hook these people at the beginning. It creates engagement, and when you feel like as we're going through the course, there's a low point, you can come back and re-engage the learner about what is in it for them. Another thing about responsible curriculum is we got to look at is you always hear about interactivity, especially when we're designing education that's online. We're like, oh, we need interactive. We want to click things. I want them to move things around. I want to put things together. Well, we got to be really careful is that a lot of times that in adult education or online training, business training, we think of it interactivity as engagement. We got to be very clear that interactivity is not engagement. Just because you got people clicking things doesn't mean they're engaged. Like we talked before, that engagement is, what is the hook? What is in it for the person that is taking the education? What is the deep down desire for them to make that change to improve upon themselves? So remember that when, as much as interactivity is fantastic and it's good, we just don't want to overwhelm the learner with a lot of clicking just because it we believe it creates engagement. Again, it comes back to engaging the learner, and it comes back to the idea of junk miles. Just as you have a bunch of information in there, how does that interactivity actually connect to the learner, and does it actually transfer that knowledge or help them practice the subject matter they've just learned? The second step is talking about responsible practice. So, how do we start making responsible practice for these people? And what it is practice is take the material that we're teaching them where they can apply it and use it and see where it works. We need to build clusters of responsible practice. Those are the activities in the group. You might do a group activity, you might do role playing, you might have different types of, and that could be formative assessments, so like, multiple choice quizzes where they practice so they can see where they're at. They can have, in those multiple choices, you can have small vignettes, which are like kind of like small semi scenario small scenarios that they work through and figure out what choices are. But basically, when we develop this practice or these activities, we got to make sure that they directly relate and build on the learner's learning or the education that they're taking. So a lot of times, again, we get into junk miles here. We just adding, I've read a new book on how to add activities to my course or how to activities in the classroom, and I just start adding activities for no real direct relation and to actually making it a better experience, a learning experience for the learner. So basically what happens is that we create these really good responsible practices, which is the activities, and then therefore that allows the learner to develop proficiency through this. So again, remember that when we're developing these practices, it could be a number of things. I am offering a course on ULearn that's going to have a little more information on this. If you want to take that, it will give you a little more deeper dive into building responsible practice clusters. Next, when we're building responsible curriculum, we're also looking at responsible evaluations. Again, we're not going to go too deep into it. We're just going to go over, it could be your standardized tests using multiple choice. You can use a short answer, long answer. You can use simulations, essays, multimedia. Sometimes the biggest thing is, can you get somebody to teach the information or material to somebody else? Um, and basically what we're doing is we're trying to find out whether that they've actually taken the material that we have taught, the education that needs to be transferred, and have they met the objective to a point where they're some type of competency. These are more important if you're doing certificate courses or that kind of thing where you're offering a certificate of proficiency or completion. You have to show somehow that the learner did do the material and understood it. Again, you got to be very careful. Like we talked about multiple choice, make sure you actually make good multiple choice questions, not ones that are, if I'm trying to teach somebody what a hammer looks like, and the three choices you get is like choice of a hammer, and then the other one's a grapefruit and three other fruits. It's obvious that what the correct answer would be. But on the other hand, there's the other avenue where we're going out of our way to create multiple choice questions that are, what is the best answer? And you basically give them three correct answers, but depending on the context and where it's coming from, what is the best answer? And that's usually low level type of evaluation. Essays and open short answer, long answer questions become a little more dicey. They take more time to manage. You got to go through, mark them, and they're very subjective. There's lots of room for subjectivity in those type of marking. You have multimedia. What I'm referring to that is that you have drag and drop, put stuff in order, and different things. All right, so just remember that there's a lot of responsibility when you're building responsible evaluations and to show a competency. And again, it's usually if you have to have some type of certificate to prove that there is competency. So what happens after we build all this responsible curriculum, responsible practice, responsible evaluations? So basically, what happens is the student or the learner is now responsible to learn the material, because the end result is, when it comes right down to it, is the learner, student, or employee, staff member is responsible to learn the new material. What we're doing is we're building material to make it easier for them to learn it, to put it into long-term memory. And what happens after that, we get to this point where maybe they are competent, right? They've done the material, they're proficient. So the next step would be is for them, we want them to help improve their behavior. So not saying it's bad behavior, it's just a terminology we use, is that they're going to need real life experience. And that's where they're going to develop this mastery. This is where it's really going to stick. This is where the real learning happens. We can give them all the material we want beforehand. If they don't actually go out and use the material and stumble a little bit and come back and realize what they need to do better, this is how they build mastery. So the very end is that we have developed this responsible curriculum. The student has done their work, and the next step for them is to go out and actually do it in real life to get that experience, and which will develop mastery. Okay, that's the end of the little bit of this micro course on responsible education. So hopefully this gives you an idea of what responsible education is. So basically, we're going to take the terminology adult education, and we need to shift away to using the words responsible education. It makes you responsible as an education designer, company, institution, responsible for building very good curriculum and content that can be delivered to your employees, students, and it's value based driven. So the expectation is that if you're going to charge a lot of money, or it's going to make a big change in your company, your education that you're giving to your people that are in your company, or the learners that are coming to your school, is going to be of value to them. We're going to actually show the learner where the pinch points are, the problems we're solving. We're going to tell them what the hook is and why it's important for them to learn this material. And by the time we do all this and build a really strong, engaging, responsible curriculum and responsible content practice with evaluations, it's going to lead to a way better learner outcome. And how does this help you? It just gives you way better learners. Your learners are going to be happier. They're going to come back and pay for more courses. They're going to be excited when they leave your classroom. They're going to be excited to come back to your classroom. But if we keep doing what we're doing and just saying it's adult education, it's up to them to learn, they need to go read the textbook again, or read some really crappy PowerPoints that we handed out at the end of the um, education, you're not going to do better. So let's start looking at the term responsible education, put it into play. Again, like I said, it gets rid of the barriers on whether we're doing pedagogy or it's anagogy or whether it's adult learning theory. Basically, let's just put all that thing in, figure out what we need to teach. What is the end objective? What is the material that is in there to hit that objective? And let's teach it the best way possible with multiple ways to learn it. All right, I'm Jason Jolson. I'm the founder of You Learn Online. We do have a course on how to develop curriculum online visually. So the idea is that we can transfer more information visually faster. So come check it out, and we'll see you later.